Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics here at Mid-America Christian University. I am here with our Week 2 video discussion prompt for COM 3603, Mass Communication Perspectives. This week we have our readings, Communication Theory and Millennial Popular Culture, a case study chapter that explores an aspect of narrative analysis. We have a narrative analysis short video available embedded into D2L, on the content page, and then a primary reading from Arthur Asa Berger's Media and Society. And I want to draw inspiration from Berger's text because I think this is one of his best chapters in this book. Media and Society, a Critical Perspective, the third edition. While some of the statistical information that Berger uses in other chapters of this book start to feel outdated by this point, the information, the content, the analytics, the critical lens that he brings to thinking about media in all of its various forms does not outdate. There's some riveting stuff if you give it the time to consider what he's talking about. And so a point he wants to make is that while many traditional critics were in argument over what art is, they actually were arguing for many about the wrong thing. And so he says, what is it doing? Or in other words, what are the functions of art? And we're expanding a term like art, or exchanging it rather, to consider mass media, because mass media can perform the functions of art as well as many other tenets across various mediums. So let's get to the point. I want to cut to a couple of different avenues that are worth pointing out. It was a hard time deciding which portion or excerpt from this text that I wanted to use. I love the separation of terms known as the POEM acronym. All right, so pragmatic, objective, expressive, mimetic. I think that's fascinating. Starting page 57 there of the third edition, but I want to look at something a little bit different for our prompt. So this would require a little bit of reading. Make sure you've read at least the first half of this chapter prior to executing that video response, and we do want to get those in a timely mode and manner. So looking at one of the middle sections, he talks about essentially what is genre theory, right? This comparison and contrast of how a given text is imitative or innovative, how there are certain conventions that make a given genre or a code that we're familiar with in a media product, a media text or type, and then there are inventions, the new things, the ways in which something stands out from what came before it, and that draws our attention to it, typically in a positive way. All right, and so on page 59, table 4.1, Berger lists some genre kinds of texts, specifically on television, but of course for our creative elite, you can always think outside the box if you're feeling inspired in that direction. But here's what we want to do. Make sure you check out the media video on narrative analysis. Read the portions on different types of conventions, media texts, in a chapter about textual analysis. And here is our prompt. Get there already. We're here, finally. We want each of you to compare and contrast, all right? Compare and contrast. This is the prompt. Compare and contrast two types of media narratives, all right? And so when we say two types of narratives, think about distinct genres of storytelling in media. Television's easy to lean on, but we could say film, but film is all storytelling narrative, right? Fictional narrative. We get that. What we want is thinking about television, or you can bring over some streaming content, right? I know some of our students prefer streaming or cord cutters and so on, but here's what we want you to think about is a comparison and contrast between two types of narrative. So, in other words, you need to understand how does, here's the tie back, how does each narrative function? All right, so you could think about news. How does news generate a narrative or frame, narrative? How does, and this would be an important one, sports frame narrative, okay? Versus alternative programming, reality television. How does it build narrative? Or how does a sitcom or a melodrama, a soap opera, an animated cartoon series, how do they distinctly develop narrative? Okay, and so compare and contrast two. Let's keep it to two sample texts. But let's be clear, these two texts should not be of a similar make. Okay, so compare and contrast two different types. Briefly, in addition to the table 4.1 that lists several options on page 59, if I'm not mistaken, there are also some very useful questions about analyzing commercials, okay? A couple of pages down the line, page 63 in my text, at subtitle Analyzing Commercials, there are 8 questions here. Perhaps these questions could give you more room to think about how you want to compare and contrast your two narrative types. Check that out, or relay a question of your own making. But it's a comparison and contrast, two types of narrative, of media narrative, all right? Because we're exploring mass communication perspectives. Com 3603, a week on narrative, and many other ideas. But narrative, one of our central themes. I'm looking forward to some rich discussion from everyone. Don't forget to post early so that you have time to comment on one another's work. Thank you. Look forward to more.